Welcome to Leaders Lead Podcast. Are you ready to conquer your challenges and achieve greatness? Join us as we dive into inspirational stories of industry leaders who have overcome adversity and reached new heights. Get ready for electrifying insights and captivating conversations that will ignite your passions for success. This is your go-to show for empowerment, growth, and leadership. Buckle up. Leaders Lead Podcast is here to take you on a transformational ride. Hey, welcome everybody. This is Tony Taylor. I'm super excited. Welcome to Leaders Lead the Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Rafe Furst. I am excited to talk to him because, man, he's doing some amazing thing. He has done some amazing thing. I got really lost on YouTube a couple of nights just looking at some of the TED Talks that he's done. I'm taking a whole bunch of notes. It was almost like he wasn't coming on the show. I had to tell myself to go to bed because I just got lost in some of the cool things that he's did. So welcome to the show, sir. I got your name right.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, Tony. This is I love your intro. This is amazing.
Thank you. We do this virtual. So it's one of those things that even myself, I have to get myself in the mood in order to do it. So it doesn't feel like a Zoom meeting. And that's something that we teach our students at Speak University is, what can you do a little bit different? And the viewers and the listeners, I don't really think that they going to see what you just saw, but I just like just kind of bringing us into the mood, man. And I'm not just saying this just to be saying this. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
I'm honored to be here, really. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the story? I always like to start off. What's your story?
Yeah. How many days do we have?
Yeah. I think you agreed 45 minutes to an hour, but yeah, just, how did things start off?
Totally. I grew up in Venice Beach, California in the 70s and early 80s. And I was always into games and computers and whatnot. One of the games that I loved playing early on was poker, and that'll become important in my story as well. So as an early computer kid, went to Stanford University and studied computer science and was in Silicon Valley in the early 90s. The web browser first came out. I got an early look at the first web browser before most people. I was like, man, this is going to change everything. So I jumped in with a bunch of friends who are also techies and whatnot. And we came up with lots of ideas for what we were going to do to start a company. And we eventually launched a game company called Pick'em Sports, where we took those, the office pools, football games and March Madness and whatnot. Well, there was a time when all that stuff was pencil and paper. And so we took it and we brought it online and we sold that online. We sold that company in 1999, a really good exit for, a guy just turning 30 and, went traveling for several years and followed my passion for playing poker, played on the poker tour all throughout the 2000s, started angel investing, and one of the companies I invested in was called Full Tilt Poker. And I joined that team, did another startup kind of before Full Tilt really took off and called Expert Insight, where we taught people how to get inside the mind of an expert as they're doing their thing, whether it's poker or golf or card tricks or whatnot. 2006, I won a World Series of Poker bracelet and pot limit hold'em. It's a year on the road in 2003 with my best friend, going to all sorts of sporting events for an entire year around the country, called the Ultimate Sports Adventure. Let's see.
Didn't y'all have like an RV with was it like a Corvette behind it or something like that? I read.
So it was a Porsche. It was my buddy's Porsche. He had also cashed out his startups and was playing poker on the poker tour with me. His name is Phil Gordon, and he kind of became famous like that year as a host of Celebrity Poker Showdown. And so we just had a ball for an entire year. I started a few more companies before. So crowdfunder because I was really interested in bringing crowdfunding to startups.
Mm.
Crowdfunder was equity crowdfunding, and the crypto company, because I was early on in crypto. One of the themes is I see 5 to 10 years ahead of most folks, and that's a blessing and a curse. I'm often too early, but I started having kids about 11, 12 years ago. My wife and 3 boys now. We moved from Los Angeles, where we were living and where I grew up, to Boulder, Colorado 6 years ago. And yeah, so that's where I am now. These days, I'm no longer doing the direct investing or starting companies. It's a wild ride, or playing poker professionally. But I use all that experience and knowledge and fun times to coach and advise both founders and investors, or folks wanting to get into investment, teaching them how to beat the VCs at their own game, because it's ripe for disruption. A lot of things they're doing wrong, and a lot of opportunities out there if you have the money and the acumen. So
I love that.
I'm writing a book on that subject called The Future of Venture Capital. So I'll pause there. That's like many days worth of story condensed into a few minutes.
No, man, I love that. You tell your story so good, man. I think there's some power in storytelling. I can tell that you've told that story quite a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're a good storyteller. I love it. One thing that stuck out to me, you started and exited your first company. You said it was at 31, right?
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
I'm 30, 31, 29. I don't remember exactly, but yeah.
I thought is so freaking cool. There's a couple of things that I think about. You said that I think I read somewhere where you had $1 million in your pocket after you sold the company. How did that feel, being so young with so much money in your pocket and the luxury to take some time off like you did?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just an amazing time. It kind of felt like, going through school, I was on a track to achieve in society. And, that was a big part of my identity and who I was. And it was a dream come true.
Wow.
I had no idea how freaking lucky I got in terms of timing and everything. And certainly just kind of going through Stanford when I did was like, and being in Silicon Valley at that time, I mean, I was just so fortunate. And I know that, like, these days, the world of entrepreneurship is opened up to much more people. It's easier than ever to start a company, but just having that advantage, I didn't realize how lucky I'd gotten. So yeah, I mean, it was an incredible time, and I really enjoyed myself. These days I reflect on, okay, well, what does it take these days for someone to start a company and build it to be successful, and whatever their definition of success is. And I love helping people get there.
I read a lot about folks building up companies, and that is the standard. Like, it's something that you're supposed to build a company up, usually so that you can sell it. Was that kind of like your mindset with all the companies that you've been able to build and exit out of?
Well, to be clear, I've had several companies that, we built, we spent a lot of money on, we got a lot of investors, and they were complete failures in the marketplace.
Mm.
Yeah, my mindset had been always build to sell, build to exit, maybe go public. But it wasn't to continue what we build a legacy and make it sustainable. And I think that that's part of just the culture and startup culture, just kind of what our society values. I would love to see there is a shift towards doing well by doing good.
Oh,
And if you're doing well by doing good, this idea of social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, impact investing, to me, that's really where we need to go as a society. And ultimately, the entrepreneurs and the investors who think this way and act this way, they're more fulfilled and in many cases more successful financially as well. And so, yeah, I was just, part of the culture that said that, yeah, build it, get as big as possible and sell it and move on. But these days, I would advise people to take a different mindset, to take a long-term mindset. And if you're having a good time and you're doing well by, well by other people, your customers, your employees, your shareholders, why would you want to stop?
Yeah. Yeah. That is, yeah. And that's why I asked you, because I was thinking about my own business, and I get anxiety just thinking about the idea of selling it to
Don't do
somebody
it.
else.
Don't do it.
Huh?
Why would
Don't
you
do
do it? Give me a good reason why, right? If you say, look, I'm feeling like I've kind of achieved what I want to achieve, and I have different goals right now, and I could use, the money and the free time, then yeah, that's a perfectly valid reason to sell the company. But don't, I would never say do it just because that's what everybody does. I've never been a believer in doing what everybody does.
I know, I can tell, man. I can tell from your history, and I think that is super cool. What do you think about? I mean, nowadays things are. Um, I think back when you were doing this work, I don't think podcasts and stuff were so popular. Do you see any advantage of VCs investing in podcast?
It's an interesting. I don't really know about the economics of podcasts. I mean, do they have, you know, financial returns? Are they lucrative? Like, what's the business model in podcast?
Yeah, so the way that it works, majority of the folks that are making money off of podcasts, they're making it off of either like affiliate stuff, which there really isn't a whole bunch of money, but then there's sponsorships from some of the bigger companies. But then the big thing, especially for what's been really good for us, is the products and services. And one of my big things that I love to do is I love to help other people build. Like, it's
Yeah.
one thing for me to do it, but I love seeing somebody come out with a top 3 or top 1% podcast, which I think is pretty cool. And that's what I was just thinking: is there any room for something like that, or if not, what are some things that you think would be more along the realm of VCs investing in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first I would ask the question first, like, okay, so regardless of whether it was a VC or friends and family or angel investors or a strategic investor, what's the use? Why would you want to take investment? Like, what legitimately, like, what's the question? What's the use of proceeds, and why are you better off having investment, and how much, versus not having investment?
Yeah, a lot of podcasters that I come across, this is something that me and you were talking about before we started recording, but they're bootstrapping their own stuff, right? And they're running into it depends on who they are and where their show is at. They're running into a lot of overhead, and sometimes that overhead like takes the plane straight out of the air and go down. And they're wanting ways to build their show up a little bit more so that get more eyes on it, get more sponsorships on it. Yeah, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Roughly speaking, what does it cost to launch, to run, and to grow a podcast?
Well, it depends. I know for me, our podcast is I probably spend maybe like $250 a month on the podcast. As far as revenue, you can get it to where you have a podcast where people are making or spending a few thousand, or some 20,000, because they're operating studios and stuff like that. I do mines out of my own house, so the overhead is pretty low.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my sense, is that, podcasts are incredible platforms for, helping the host and also the guests and other ways, right?
Hmm.
Talked about, products and services like coaching, there may be other kinds of services or products that are integrated somehow into the show because the host is, got an interest in those businesses. Maybe it's an investing podcast. And so, they find clients from it. But I don't see the podcast itself as an investable thing. It's a hits game, right? In terms of if it's going to make a lot of money directly in and of itself, it has to be in the top 1 or 2%, right? And it's just too hard. It's just statistically speaking, I think it's just too hard to bank on that. That said, friends and family, I think, that's not a bad way to go if you need some startup capital, and, you do it as a friendly investment where, you make it, hey, I'll get back your initial principal, through revenues, through sharing the revenues. So you're right, rather than have it be like a particular payment plan that you don't know if you can match, right? So make the return on investment aligned with the revenue that comes in. And then you can say, okay, well, and you can have, revenue share after that. We'll get you to, double or triple, what you put in, and then we'll call it a day, and I'll be launched, and you'll have made, some money, and everybody's happy. But it's not the kind of like VC investment where they're looking for 10, 100x capital, and they're going to be pushing you to generate revenues and grow faster than you really can.
Ooh, I love that. You just helped out a lot of podcasters. I love that. You just answered some really tough questions. What about the type of businesses that would fit that criteria?
Yeah. In terms of like VC investment?
Yeah.
So I think I'll just preface it by saying that I feel that most startups that look for or take venture capital would be better off not doing it. And so let me make the case for not doing it. Okay. Well, let me make the case for why I said that. Okay. So venture capitalists, they have a very particular business model. They're looking to find the unicorns, right? These are the companies that will return, 100x or more on their invested capital. And the reason they're looking for unicorns is their business model is based on they invest in not a large number of companies, not large enough to deal with the risk. So it's risky betting on early stage companies, and they bet on, let's say, 10 a year. Venture capitalists bet on 10 a year, where all the statistical data says that if you really want to not risk that capital and not having an underperforming fund, you really need to be investing in 10 times that, like 100 deals per year. And so these are kind of gambling with their investors' money, because VCs don't use their own money. They use limited partner, bigger investors, wealthy families and endowments and whatnot. And so they're looking to deploy that capital, and they're looking to get 3 or 4x return on that initial capital in their portfolio. But since, let's say, 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 companies that they invest in go to zero, that's just the way it is. It's high risk, high reward. The 10th company, they hope to get 10x or more, and they're really hoping to get 100x, the unicorns, right? And so if they can capture a unicorn, they can make up for all the lost proceeds on all the other ones. So they're looking to justify their entire strategy and all of their picks by capturing that one unicorn. And so what they need to do is they need to really, like, when a company starts doing well and has the ability to have hyper growth, they need to pump them up full of growth capital and and get it to that unicorn level, $1 billion valuation, and then sell it.
Wow.
So they're not really in it for the health of the founders or the company itself. Most companies are not meant for that hyper growth trajectory. And so I just don't think it's a good fit for most companies.
Wow. Do you think sometimes they try to force the fit as far as,
Well, first of all,
because I would imagine that would be kind of dangerous.
so the first thing that they do is they filter out any company that they don't, and for the most part, it's got to be some cutting edge technology, something that the world hasn't seen before, or just the right opportunity at the right time that they can pour gasoline on and achieve hyper growth. So they're filtering for companies first of all, and so that's why they're never going to look at a podcast as a VC investment. But let's just say you had a widget company, and a VC said, yeah, we'd like to invest in it. They're going to be looking for, and I'm just going to be honest, most founders who start a company are not the ones to get it to unicorn status and hyper growth.
Wow. Okay.
There's a lot of what you need to get there is just managing that hyper growth, and it has to do with finance, and it has to do with personnel, and getting performance and hitting KPIs, key performance indicators. And it's not really focused on organically, sustainably growing the business. And so VCs, they won't tell you this, but they're looking for that time when most likely they're going to have to replace the founder with a growth-oriented CEO, someone who's kind of been there, done that, has a name. And so, well, when I started, we bootstrapped, meaning we used our own money to launch the company, and we took a strategy that would not require outside money.
I love that.
For the very reason that when we started in the mid 90s, they were called vulture capitalists.
Vulture capitalists.
I'm saying my best friends are VCs, so I can say that. And I've been and look, it's not a one size fits all. There are incredible venture capitalists out there, and with huge hearts, and they get it, and they're not trying to, pump you into a unicorn or dump you if you're not a unicorn. I'm just saying, by and large, that's what the industry economics kind of dictate, is if they're not really thinking about that, they may not be able to make it as VCs. Now, I'll say there's an exception to that, and this is what I teach in my book. Is have you seen the movie or read the book Moneyball?
Oh yeah, okay. I love it. Yeah,
So
Brad Pitt, right?
Brad Pitt, and it's this idea. It's a true story of the Oakland A's manager Billy Beane taking this last in the league Oakland A's team and getting them to I think they got him to the playoffs, but they certainly got him to the best record over the course of a couple of years. And the way they did it is they recognized that a lot of their competitors in big markets, New York and Los Angeles, they were spending a lot of money to get home run hitters.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy here is unicorns is trying to hit home runs in venture capital world. But what they realized is they did this quantitative analysis that what really wins games is consistently getting on base, hitting singles and doubles. And so they just used a quantitative approach, an analytical approach, a game theory approach to managing baseball. And they revolutionized the game of baseball and other sports too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's going on in VC world. Is the VCs that are really successful, they're hitting singles and doubles. They're not, creating unicorns necessarily. Unicorns happen naturally, but they're not trying to force it. And so the Moneyball strategy for venture capital is not to invest in 10 deals per year, but to invest in 100 deals per year.
Wow. It all sounds like a gamble.
Well, gamble. Yes, I mean venture capital is strategic risk taking, and it's
Yeah.
very similar to poker that way. It's strategic risk taking with an edge, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Is that the correlation to that? Does it make you feel the same like when you would play poker? Is it the kind of the same concept as far as getting that win? That one company is that one win for the day, or
Well, okay, so poker, just like venture capital, it's not about getting that one big win or winning that one big pot. It's about consistently making good decisions with a positive expected value, a positive edge. And, sometimes it's not going to go, if you can make decisions that have, a 55% chance of being a winning decision,
Mhm.
45% chance of making a losing decision, you're going to be fabulously wealthy and fabulously successful in whatever you're doing. So you don't have to, have that huge exit. You don't have to have that, when huge pots. If you're consistently making good decision, the numbers will take care of themselves. You just have to have enough shots on goal. You have to have enough at bats. You have to have enough companies in your portfolio if you're an investor, and you have to have enough runway if you're an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is the same thing as poker, same thing as venture capital. It's consistently making good strategic decisions under conditions of uncertainty and risk where there's something at stake, right?
Mm.
That's what unifies all three activities.
Beautifully said. That gives me so much joy hearing you say that. It's like one thing that I take away from that, and I'm sure our listeners and the viewers take away from it is, to make it simple, is keep showing
Keep
up,
showing
and
up.
have a plan, and work that plan.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and me too, I'll be really honest. A lot of times when things don't work out, as entrepreneurs, I mean, because it's one of the loneliest things that I've ever done. One of the things that have made me so sad, made me so depressed, is being an entrepreneur. But oh my God, that email that you get, you know, with that next big payment, it's such a high, right? And it's sometimes it could be a roller coaster. So what I'm getting from you from this so far is, if I keep being steady in the pocket, keep making those strategic decisions, no matter what, when shit is hitting the fan, if I still keep going, I'm going to get to where I want to go.
That's right. Yeah. Find a way to stay in the game, right? So don't take such big risks where your entire bankroll or your entire, time or energy is depleted if you lose the hand, so to speak. Right? It's
Mhm.
not about any one hand. It's about, managing your resources, taking the long view, because in the long run, again, if you're making winning decisions, the outcomes may not be, there's a difference between a good decision and a good outcome, right?
Mhm.
55-45, that's all you need, right? So if you're making those 55% or greater decisions over time, you're going to come out a winner in the long run. So
Oh,
yeah,
this is
definitely.
good.
Yeah.
This is so good, man. I want to switch gears a little bit. I there's something, I don't know if it's something that I heard you say or something that I read, but it really inspired me. And I'll tell you, I started my own company, and when was it? Probably about probably about 5 years ago. I was at my desk, and all of a sudden, just thinking about it, I mean, it kind of takes me back, but I remember just getting really emotional. I remember things just getting really blurry. And all of a sudden, I didn't know what to do, man. I had this glass door that they had put in. I wanted to be able to see the employees. And that was kind of a drawback in this moment, because I felt like in that moment that I wasn't having a nervous breakdown, but it was just like an extreme sense of anxiety, because I wasn't fulfilling my purpose. And I just knew it. It hit me. I was making some damn good money, Rafe, and probably the most money that I've ever made at a time. And all of a sudden, it was just like, it just hit me. This is not what you're supposed to be doing. And dude, I got under my desk and I'm bawling. And the first person that I called was my wife. And I told her what was going on. She told me, pack your shit up. Excuse my language. Yeah. She said, pack your shit up and come home. And I never went back. And from listening to your story, it sounds like you had almost a similar kind of crisis moment. And your wife was the one that supported you through that journey. And I was wondering if you would be willing to share that for our listeners and our viewers, because a lot of times they don't see that. They don't see the crisis behind the scenes. A lot of times they're like, oh my God, this guy is rich, or this gal is, has it all figured out, but they don't really see the full picture.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm happy to share, what happened to me. But I want to first acknowledge that it's hard when you're going through a crisis to realize it's not the end. It's just the beginning of something possibly new and better. I feel like crisis is, I didn't, before, but I now have come to understand the value of a crisis. And really, it's just your soul, your higher self telling you, look, you got to make a change. Something's wrong here. And, just stop what you're doing because it's not working. And so, I mean, I hear your story. I think, hallelujah, you had that moment. Because I think so many people feel isolated and alone, especially if they're going on an entrepreneurial path, but you don't have to be. All right. You could be in, a corporate job and doing well by everybody's standards, by the standards you thought. And then you're like, what the fuck? Why am I not happy? Why am I miserable? Like, why am I having panic attacks? Like all that stuff. And so listening to that inner voice is really important, I feel. So, yeah. So my first major crisis happened in 2011. So I remember I told you Full Tilt Poker was one of the companies that I invested in, and I was a early founder. It was doing really, really well financially and was on top of the world. But I wasn't really minding the shop. I was on the board of directors and I was supposed to be, looking at the finances, and, we'd always had legal headwinds because the US government was not happy with online poker. We thought that we were in the legal right to be able to play it because it's a game of skill and whatnot. It's not, covered under the gambling laws, but nonetheless, we ignored the signs that it was time for us to get out of the US and focus on outside of the US business. And the US brought a major lawsuit against us and all the other online poker companies at the time and said, you guys got to get out. And they shut down the sites. They sued the companies.
Damn.
They sued the officers of the company, including myself personally. And it's April of 2011. I was on top of the world one day, and my entire life, slow motion implosion for the next 8 months.
Wow.
So, I lost all the money, might have lost my legal freedoms. I lost friends. I was fighting with my wife, and I was in denial the whole time. I was not letting the crisis in. If I really kind of listened to the signals that I was getting, anybody from the outside could say, easily, Rafe, why don't you just stop fighting this? That would have been my under the desk moment where I asked for help, but I wasn't ready to ask for help yet. And I didn't let anybody in. I was scared. I was ashamed, but that made it worse. it got to the point where New Year's, December 31st, 2011, I went to bed and I woke up in a psychotic state. I'd had a complete mental, nervous, emotional breakdown. And yeah, you're right. My wife was there, and I had friends as well. And people rallied around me, and my parents rallied around me. And, I just hunkered down, and recovered for a couple of months. But again, I really didn't let the lessons in fully at that time.
Even then.
And we could talk about the reasons, but, basically, I hit so many green lights in my life. Up until then, I was, let's say 2011, I was like 40. Yeah. And I'd hit everything right. I'd won the game at every level. And so, when you had so much success and you had this seemingly one setback, and I didn't think of myself as, being responsible in any way, but I had responsibility. And I was just in denial about all the things that I was doing that were not in anybody's best interest, including my own. But I had all this other evidence that, hey, I walked on water. I was, everything I touched, turned to gold, even though that's not true. If you actually look back, I told you about those things that failed. I was just in my own ego and my own delusion, in my own fantasy. And I had a lot of evidence and people, kind of around me saying, hey, and so it took a few more years, more setbacks, more failures. But the key really was having people around me that understood me, understood what was going on. I got into, multiple forms of therapy, and I found an incredible community of peers who were, everybody had their own story coming from different walks of life, but we helped each other with the process of learning how to be an adult human, good person out there in the world. Yeah, we want to be successful in what we do, but we might change our definition of what that success is. But just having a community of people who cared.
Wow.
So until I let that in and let other people in and started becoming radically transparent, things weren't going to change. Yeah.
Wow. That is so beautiful. Radically transparent. That's just what I take from that is just being really real.
Yeah.
And honest about what's going on with you, and like really taking a deep look on the inside.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. That's it. It's being willing to really look inside. And I had no training in that growing up. I didn't know what the difference was between a thought and a feeling.
No, I hear you.
It's hard to look inside if you can't use the major tool, which is, your emotional system. Right.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the spiritual awakening that you had during that time.
Yeah.
And the reason that I asked you this is because kind of when I had my moment, I mean, afterwards, it wasn't, all rainbows and stuff. I use this podcast as a platform, and I, throughout my depression, and I learned about plant medicine, and I learned about meditation, and I became very spiritual. I became the person that I would really make fun of. And that's what brought me peace. And I think I read somewhere that you had a big spiritual awakening as well, correct?
Yeah. Yes. And so the other side of the psychosis that I experienced was a very, very spiritual experience. Now, I didn't have the support around me yet to actually explore and learn and grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
I did over time. And yes, meditation, therapy, plant medicine, community, reading, watching the podcast, listening podcasts, going to workshops and seminars, and all of it. Yes. Like,
Yeah.
why the hell not?
Yeah.
Right. All it
Wow.
all, and everybody's different, and what resonates with some people doesn't resonate with other, but like try it. Try things out. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain, as you've experienced.
Yeah.
Um, Going on podcasts, sharing, hosting podcasts. It's an incredible form of therapy and healing and connectivity.
Yeah, I agree. I have quite a few people that reach out because I shared my story quite a bit. Thank you for sharing your story, by the way. That means a lot. It's helped me grow, and I know that it's going to help other people grow just from hearing you be so transparent. So thank you. But you're right. Sharon is part of the part of the growth. And a lot of people, they're like, man, I would love to share my story. And I look at podcasting as, kind of like a journal. Journaling is boring to me, but if I can just come in here and click record and tell my story, I feel so good afterwards. So thank you for sharing your story. And I'm curious I'm curious, and I'm trying to put a connection here for the viewers and listeners. After you have this spiritual awakening, I'm willing to guess that business changed for you once you've kind of connected the dots of who you were as a person. I'm guessing.
Well, I guess I'm a slow grower, a slow learner. I'm going to say no and yes, not initially. In fact, it's been a pretty long journey since 2011 to really feel ready to put myself out there in a very authentic way in business.
Mm,
And that's really my current mission and journey as a coach, as an advisor, to show up as I do in personal relationships, in business relationships, not think transactionally, not be worried about, are we achieving goals, but really to
yeah.
focus on adding value, being in relationship, letting the money and all the other stuff take care of itself.
Wow. Beautiful. It's interesting that you say that. I actually had a few months ago, I yeah, I worked through the podcast, a couple other businesses, and I'm actually going to school to become a counselor. I went back to school because I want to help people, specifically caregivers. But man, I felt like, man, I had a gun to my head because it was just like you said, all of these goals and all of this stuff. And I'll tell you the way that this happened to me, because I've always been goal orientated. I was in the Marine Corps. I worked as a firefighter. So it's like, there has to be a goal. There has to be a tangible solution, right? And there's this guy this amazing guy named Maxim. I sit in meditation retreats with him quite a bit. And I asked him a question. I said, so when are you going to get done with that building? They're building a Maloka. You know what a Maloka is? It's like where they do like different ceremonies, meditation retreats. It looked like a big yurt or a big dome.
Okay.
And he said, well, yeah. So I say, when are you going to get done with that thing? And he's like, well, I don't know. I'm like, so what's your goal in getting done with this? He looked at me because I really want to know, when the hell is this damn thing going to be done? And I just felt like he was being evasive, and there is no goal. I'm just going to do it whenever, I'm going to do it when I have time, and when the universe, prepares it for me, it'll be ready or something like that. And I'm just like, oh, whatever. So I get in the car with my buddy and I look at my buddy and I go, can you believe that he said that he doesn't have a goal when it comes to finishing that thing? And so we talked about it a little bit, and then it dawned on me later. I am dying because of these damn goals that I set.
Amen.
And man, I went probably like the next like 30 days and just like in my head, like, oh my God, this is what's killing me. And I let go. And I tell you what, I haven't felt, you know, better. Like this is the best that I felt in a very long time. When I let go of the
Yes.
goals, when I let go of the clients and, thinking about, the anxiety from just looking at my calendar, I let go. And it was just like, people were like, "Hey, let me pay you for this. Let me pay you for that," with no effort. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what I was thinking about when you're talking about that. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up or placing that the way that you did it, man. So right
I,
now,
I just have to respond to that because that's
uh,
so incredible. And I just want to honor your courage because it takes so much courage, in my experience, to let go like that.
thank you. I receive it.
Yeah. And I mean, if there's one thing that listeners and viewers take from this, it's like, yeah, what Tony said. That's the key.
I receive it. Thank you. I mean, it took a lot. I mean, yeah, it took a lot, and it was, in my opinion, it was the missing ingredient that I needed to make that perfect pot of soup. And that's what I'm living in right now, is that perfect pot of soup, man. I'm talking to you, I'm learning from you, man. And I really appreciate it. You're mentoring folks right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know people are like, I want to connect with Rafe. I want to learn the things that he's teaching. What you got going on?
Yeah. Absolutely. The best way to, to learn more and whatnot and to contact me is through my website, Rafe Furst, RAFE First, FURST.com. Just like you said, I'm coaching, advising founders, professionals, anybody who is like me and like you, it sounds like on their second mountain journey. And I just finished reading a book, David Brooks, incredible book called The Second Mountain. It's this idea that, so many of us, especially in this society, the first part of our life, maybe up to, 30s and up to 40 or so, my case, 50, because it takes a while. I'm a slow learner. It's about achievement. It's about me, myself, and I. It's, and doing things in the world and making money or hitting goals. And there's nothing wrong with that. But many of us get to a point where it's like, okay, well, what else is there? We're not fulfilled. We have an under the desk moment. We have a crisis that comes from the outside, like I did. And okay, so how do we bring meaning and purpose and achievement and relationships? How do we bring it all together in, what do you call it? The soup, the perfect soup? How are we a whole person? How do we bring our whole selves to every encounter, every relationship, and do well for ourselves by doing good for others, with others out there in the world?
Yeah.
So that's really, I love speaking to anybody who is on that journey. And I have a lot of bumps and bruises and successes and failures and stuff to share. And oftentimes I'll bring in poker analogies and game theory, and then the next moment we'll go deep into the inner workings of our emotions and our dreams and whatnot. So nothing's off the table. It's, I try to support people exactly where they're at and what it is that they're wanting and needing. And I try to give them something that they're not going to get anywhere else, a different perspective, help them see things. I often, say it's like the Matrix, give them a little bit of a red pill and help them on their journey.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. Any save rounds? Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Something that's on your heart that you think our viewers and our listeners should know or need to know at this moment? Or did we hit
Yeah.
everything?
I think we hit some amazing stuff. I really appreciate the depth of the conversation and the breadth of the conversation. And yeah, again, it's like what you're doing for yourself and what you're sharing authentically and transparently is what the world needs. And people need to know that they're not alone. Being a founder is one of the loneliest journeys. Being a
Heck yeah.
CEO is one of the loneliest journeys. but it doesn't have to be. And yeah, I'm all about helping and supporting folks in this journey, and you're not alone. And there's a whole community. I have colleagues and friends who are in this journey with me, and come say hi, and we'll help you.
Will do. I appreciate it. Last question. Is there anybody that you think would be a perfect fit to come on the show that you would recommend?
God, I have so many people. Let's see. Yeah, let me think about that, and I'll give you a whole list.
I love it. Thanks. That sounds good, man. Thank you so much. If you'll stick around, I'm gonna do the outro and we will wrap it up, man. But I really appreciate you coming on the show and you being so vulnerable. You've inspired me. I'm 1000% like you've inspired the folks that are listening to this. What I got from this, if I was to wrap it up into one sentence, is yeah, it doesn't have to be lonely being a founder. Your goals, you don't have to freaking die because you're trying to hit these goals. Love and enjoy the moment. If you have a partner, use that partner for partnership. And you don't have to be that, man, I be in the dark working 24/7 and almost like building this resentment. So the folks that are listening to this, that are viewing this, you don't have to be that person. You don't have to have under the desk moment. So with that being said, I hope y'all have a good day, good night, good week, good year, and a good life.
Remember, I'm here to stand by you as you chase your dreams, lead with greatness, and continue to make a difference. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. I'll see you next time on Leaders Lead the Podcast. Peace.